GFD initiative at the University of Tokyo is basically an initiative involved with trying to assist those professors teaching in languages other than courses in languages other than Japanese. And so we try to provide a range of events throughout the year and activities that can help everyone in developing their teaching and looking into new strategies for more effective teaching, etc. And so we organize workshops like this. And we also have a number of programs that might be of interest if you're faculty. So we have the Look program, and the Look program is where we can provide funding for you to attend educational conferences or events, either online or in person. Recently, it's been online. And we also have another program called Taste, which allows you to get support and financial support for trying out new active learning approaches in your classes. So please visit our GFD website if any of those things sound like they might be useful to you, and take a look. We have application forms on there, and there are no application deadlines currently. We have open applications. Okay, so just one other important message about today's session, and that is that we have simultaneous translation, interpretation into Japanese, actually in both directions. So what that means is you can listen to the presentation parts today in English or in Japanese. And the way you do that is by selecting from the button that appears in the Zoom menu. It will either say interpretation off. If it says, it'll either say interpretation, you can click it and switch it to English or Japanese. Now, the way this will work is that this is two-way, so that when we get into sessions later where we're having Q&A and discussion, you can feel free to ask a question in English or Japanese, and it will be translated, it will be interpreted to the other language. Okay, so you can freely use either language in this session. Okay, I think, let me just check. Cecilia, is there anything else, sort of housekeeping announcements that we need before we start?
Yes, at the end of the event, we'll have a survey. We want everyone to please give us their feedback. And also we have an upcoming event next week on Wednesday, and I will share all the details.
We have an upcoming event tomorrow as well, I believe. So
yes, tomorrow and next week. So yes, we're very busy. So please join us and just check the comment box. I will add all the information there.
Okay. So today's event is going to be the first in a series of workshops that GFD has decided to run that are all related to the same topic of diversity in higher education. Okay, and so this is going to be the very first one, and so it's my very great pleasure to welcome Dr. Aurora Tsai to give to run this first workshop for us today. So Aurora is a project assistant professor in the ALESA program at the Center for Global Communication Strategies at the University of Tokyo, and actually she first sort of contacted GFD because she applied for the Look program and got some money from us to attend some relevant conferences. And as part of our Look program, we ask the speakers to report back on their findings from the meetings that they attend. And I have to say, when I went to listen to Aurora's presentation, I found it extremely fascinating, and I thought very important. And so that was where the idea for today's workshop was born. And so Aurora has been extremely helpful in putting together this workshop today. And I think you're all going to have a very, very interesting couple of hours and get a lot from this workshop. So let me just tell you a little bit. So Aurora's, her research examines how racial and linguistic ideologies are reproduced in everyday conversation. And as an applied linguist, she's particularly interested in ways language is used to negotiate identity, justify discrimination, and perpetuate ethno-racial and gender inequalities. So I'm going to hand over now to Aurora to run today's session. So thank you very much for attending, and I hope you enjoy the workshop. So Aurora, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, John, for that really great introduction. I just wanted to note as well that we are going to stop the recording before our students speak in order to protect them, students. And I also promised them we wouldn't record that section of the presentation. But parts of the presentation where I'm talking will be recorded in case people want to see that later. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can everyone see this? Okay, great. All right, so I just want to start by thanking everyone for coming. It's great to see so many people attend, and it tells me that people are really interested in learning more and raising awareness about diversity and inclusion. And of course, that is the goal in creating this talk. As John mentioned, I'm in the ALESA program, and today we're going to talk about invisible stress and exclusion experienced by minorities in the classroom. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about my background so that you know a little bit about things that have influenced my perspective and my understanding of these issues. Okay, as you know, my name is Aurora. My pronouns are she and her. I was born and raised in the US. I identify ethnically as mixed European and Taiwanese heritage, but culturally as American and Japanese. My Taiwanese family has lived in Japan for over 60 years, and therefore they're often, this type of group that has long-term residence in Japan is often referred to as zainichi. I have a PhD in second language acquisition, and my research areas are shown here: second language literacy, promoting critical language awareness in the foreign language classroom, and as John mentioned, intersections of language ideologies, race, and identity. All right, so for this workshop, I'm going to start off by providing an introduction to concepts of privilege and invisible stress faced by minorities. Then we'll get to a very important section where we actually listen to student minority voices at University of Tokyo. We have 7 students who very graciously volunteered their time and energy to talk with us today, share their experiences, and also give some words about what they want faculty to know. Okay, after that, I will try to summarize implications for teaching and work practices, and then we'll go ahead and do a Q&A session. Hopefully this whole talk and event will be under 2 hours, but we'll see how it goes based on the Q&A time. All right, so before I begin, I just want to note how important it is to know that diversity and inclusion issues, we are only touching the very surface with this event. To really understand these issues and really, actually be serious about making a difference, we need to continually learn about these issues and continually try to do better to actually make our society and our campus environments a more inclusive place. But with that in mind, the goals today are to inspire the audience to reflect on privileges for succeeding in university and society in general, to motivate us to learn more about the types of barriers and invisible stress faced by minorities in the classroom, and reflect on ways that we can change our daily practices and university culture from one that's complicit to one that actively values and supports all members of our community. Right, so I'm going to start out with a very basic definition of privilege. Right, in a social justice context, we often talk about privilege as advantages people have that they don't really think about because they never have to experience the oppressive side. And understanding it actually requires an active effort to see things from the perspective of other underprivileged people. So, for example, I have many privileges myself. I'm able-bodied, a native speaker of English, raised in a middle-class household, able to receive high levels of education, had opportunities to study, work abroad. I have a loving, healthy family. And because of these privileges, I don't have to experience the everyday stress or exclusion felt by people with physical or mental disabilities. I don't have to worry about understanding academic articles in my field. I didn't have the stress of figuring out how to pay for college, or, I didn't have to think about whether or not I could actually go to study abroad. Okay. And there are some common misconceptions about privilege I'd like to dispel. So having privilege is not something that some people have and others don't. We all have privileges. Okay, and also privilege doesn't mean that you didn't work hard in life. I like to think that I worked pretty hard in life because, like many of us, I went to school for a very long time, maybe 22 years. And I probably have very little social life due to that. So, we work really hard, we make sacrifices, and, we still have privilege though. And in my case, I know that I was able to make it as far as I have because of some of these privileges. And I think it's very helpful for us to reflect on what some of these are. So what I'd like all of us to do together as an exercise is to take a look at this privilege checklist, and we can think about what our privileges are and how it might be more difficult for people without those privileges. So you can use this link here or just view on my screen as I screen share. There's a QR code link here as well if you want to look at it. So here we go. Right, so this list is adopted from an American University Writing Center. However, I have tried to adapt it to be more relevant to a Japanese higher education context. Right, so if you identify as male or masculine, you might have some different privileges here that you can check off. So things like I can expect to receive promotions as frequently and be paid the same amount as my equally qualified colleagues. I can express frustration, passion, assertiveness without being called bossy or aggressive, or someone attributing my ideas to my time of month or being similarly dismissed. At work, I don't have to worry about harassment from customers, coworkers, or bosses. People do not make unsolicited comments about my body. The decision to hire me will not be based on assumptions of whether or not I might choose to have a family. Okay, we can also think about Japanese ethnicity and cultural privilege. In Western contexts, sometimes this is called white cultural privilege, okay, in countries like the US. So people know how to pronounce my name. I'm never perceived as strange or different because of my name. I often don't have to think about my race or ethnicity. In fact, I don't really notice it. People don't make assumptions about me based on my race, such as like I'm likely to be loud, commit crimes, be aggressive, poor at Japanese, etc. Okay, my race and ethnicity doesn't make people around me uncomfortable. I don't have to worry about finding housing due to my race or ethnicity. I'm seen as an individual, and I'm never held personally responsible for how my actions represent other people of my race or ethnicity. Okay, there's also, of course, cisgender privilege, so identifying with the same sex that you were assigned at birth. Okay, I can use public facilities, of course, locker rooms without fear of verbal abuse, assault, or arrest. people know what to call me, how to refer to me without asking. Okay, I'm not going to read all of these here, but I find actually in my class sometimes it's difficult when students don't know how to translate terms, and they might call gendered identity disorder. And of course, that can be quite harmful, using terminology that makes it sound like what you have is something that is, a mental pathology, which of course is not true. Okay, sexuality privilege, I think we're somewhat at least knowledgeable about these issues. I will have immediate access to my loved one in case of accident or emergency. Okay, I can live openly with my partner. Again, because of time, I can't go through all of these, but I do recommend people who aren't familiar with these issues to definitely go through this list and reflect on some of the ways that many people with these different identities may struggle. Okay, so again, we can talk about other things like ability privilege, okay, linguistic privilege. Many people here might relate to things like people do not make assumptions about my intelligence based on my language ability. They don't talk to me like a child or otherwise treat me like a child if you have linguistic privilege. Okay, all right, so I'm going to stop there, but let's go back to our slides here. So one thing, I said previously is we all have privilege. But then naturally, some people, they'll ask, if we all have privilege, why do we have to learn about issues faced by minorities? And here I want to point out that some people can overcome disadvantages by quote unquote, like working hard or finding other types of support. However, there are some disadvantages that minorities can never overcome because of the way they were born and raised, and the social stigma, unconscious bias attached to those identities as well. Okay, and this is also called invisible minority stress by some psychologists. And basically it's the extra stress minorities have to deal with on top of the everyday stresses that the average person would have to deal with. All right, so for example, a disadvantage one person might overcome is, say, being raised by a single father. Actually, I was raised for the most part by a single father, but I was still able to succeed, and I don't have to disclose this fact to anybody. I'm not defined by it. But when it comes to a visible minority identity, there are a lot of social perceptions of minorities that cause extra stress. So conscious and unconscious assumptions that women will prioritize household matters over work, that they should have a nice appearance, warm personality, humble, they should not be demanding or bossy, and that they have to work extra hard to be seen as legitimate authorities. So to be seen as like a legitimate, educated university professor, sometimes we have to worry in many different ways to present ourselves in ways that we can be perceived this way. Okay, and then also if a woman fails, they might sometimes have that attached to their identity as a woman. So that's another stress of many that we have to think about. So I also wanted to note that there is a magazine published by female students at Todai, and they actually do a lot of surveys with each issue. They ask about student perspectives, and in this issue in particular, they ask students about their perspectives on careers in the future, and they compare male and female student perspectives. So in this particular question, they ask, when thinking about the future, have you ever worried about the timing of when you'll get married or have children? And as you can see here, more than half of the female students stated very much. So we can see that women, the general trend is that they're more likely to be more worried about their career and family life balance. So this is just another example of, how invisible stress that is faced by minorities is something that, is just not something you might think about if you have the privilege not to. Okay. So I'd like to go ahead and end my introduction of privilege, invisible stress here, because there are so many other things that we can learn from our student speakers. And we'll go ahead and try to learn about these other types of invisible stress. And before we do so, I just want to make some notes about the way we listen to these speakers and what we should keep in mind. So sharing dialogue is a really helpful way to understand exclusion and invisible stress faced by minorities. However, it does force speakers to relive difficult experiences. It can put them on the spot, and sometimes it's quite traumatic or triggering. Right? It puts them in a vulnerable position. So, it makes them vulnerable to comments that might invalidate their experiences, and has potential to damage their relationships with friends, coworkers, professors, people in more powerful positions. Okay, it requires minorities to spend extra time and effort, emotional energy, speaking out about these issues that others just don't have to. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I also want to note that all of the students today are presenting their individual experiences as well. You should not overgeneralize their experiences to other minorities with, other people with the same minority identity, since of course minority groups are also diverse. Privacy as well, please do not repeat what you've heard in this talk outside this workshop. Okay, and despite these concerns, the first 3 bullets in particular, students have volunteered their time to speak about their experiences because of their devotion to bring about positive change. So I'm very honored to be speaking in the same talk as them, and I think we can all be very appreciative of their time and energy today. Okay, so previous LS teacher already compiled that's bilingual. So you can actually use this link here, or if you have a phone, you can use your camera for the QR code. But I can just show you briefly. Okay, just a list of student support services at Komaba. Okay, so please feel free to make use of this list if you think you can use it for any of your courses. Okay, and of course, tell students what types of support they can expect from you as a teacher, instructor in your class and in your syllabus. So for example, under course policies and expectations, you could make a statement that you want to be inclusive. Remember, words go a long way. So I will do my best to create an inclusive environment in the classroom. Right? I'm open to be corrected or told if I say or do anything that is excluding students or offensive to students. And if you approach me about this, it will never impact your grade in the course, your standing at the university, or our relationship for that matter. Right? Please feel free to talk to me about this anytime after class or during office hours. Of course, you don't have to, write this exact statement, but something to this extent would be, I think, give students the message that you are trying to be inclusive. Okay, so learning about the impacts of epistemological racism, I write here in terms of how we tend to value certain types of research and devalue others. Okay, so like Misha was talking about feminism, feminist scholarship, critical race theory, they're seen as sometimes I've had comments where people feel like that kind of research will not get you a job, or that kind of research is not interesting. So if that's the case, then you have to realize that that is actually devaluing a whole group of people as well who actually do find this research interesting and important. All right, and also as Misha was stating, choosing reading materials that reflect knowledge of authors from diverse backgrounds, so not just a reading list with only Japanese and white male authors. Right, and perhaps if you're teaching a course on classic literature and for some reason it's very difficult to find more diverse authors, then have a conversation with students about why that's so. Right, it's important for professors also to understand the level of influence they have on students with their words. As Misha was saying, these small messages really, they just have a huge lasting impact on the way we feel about ourselves. Okay, do not make assumptions about how your students identify or categorize them based on appearance or name. Right, if students work in groups, rather than allowing students to select their own groups, consider assigning groups to lower the chance of exclusion, because students themselves sometimes, not intentionally, but they do tend to exclude certain students that they perceive as different. Okay, it's also, of course, very important to know that, and really just actively understand that minorities are systematically excluded from the university system, and we need to raise our awareness about how this happens, because in many, if not, most cases, it is unconscious. Right, as Amit was talking about, faculty really do need to be more aware if they have a person with disabilities in their classroom, and they also need to know what they can do to help. Of course, this is something that the university also needs to work on in order to make sure that this happens. All right, so related to this, I think we are planning another talk, diversity and inclusion related workshop for people with special needs in October. So please stay tuned to GFD emails to learn about that. Okay, and again, words to express consideration go a long way. If you are faculty, you can just say something as simple as, if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. Okay, so what else should we do? Again, don't be complicit. Please keep learning, working to just learn about diversity, equity, inclusion issues, and make changes in your daily practices and goals. Hire and support experts in diversity, equity, inclusion to give talks, facilitate events, and provide training to faculty and students. We should really not overburden minorities and students to volunteer their time and emotional effort to raise awareness. There are experts in diversity and inclusion that we can hire and pay to talk about these issues, and we should really support that system as well. All right, what else should we do? Of course, keep learning, and to help with this, I have compiled a diversity and inclusion list of resources and suggested readings. So again, you can use your phone to access it with this QR code, or you can use this link here. And yeah, maybe I can post the link in the chat afterwards. But yeah, this is of course not a comprehensive list, but I tried to put resources that are available at Tokyo. So Office for Gender Equality homepage, diversity and training exercises for PIs, researchers. Okay, University of Tokyo groups, okay, including toward diversity, Totoko gender movement. Okay, faculty support groups, as towards diversity mentioned, UTokyo women. Okay, and also just some suggested reading materials, so helpful articles to raise awareness. Okay, so please do feel free to take a look at this on your own time and keep learning. Oh. Okay, yeah, so I'll just give you a few seconds if you want to copy this link or this QR code. Okay, and yeah, after I'm done with my presentation, which will be soon, I'll also post the link in the chat. Okay, and then also, if you have experiences that you would like to share to help raise awareness about, issues that you face at University of Tokyo, or just in general that you think we should know in higher education, please, we'd love to hear about your experiences, and we'd also love to actually use this in a future workshop. So feel free to use this link to actually access that survey. And again, I'll post this in the chat afterwards. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and start a Q&A session. Before doing so, I just want to have some ground rules to make sure we keep this a safe space for everyone involved. Right, so just know discriminatory, violent comments are prohibited. If you cannot hear, please don't hesitate to say so. You can tell me in the chat, or you can just turn on your mic and let us know. Please share the floor. If you know you're one to talk a lot, then try to make sure you don't over talk so that other people have a chance to talk and share their comments. Please do not assume that someone's gender, racial, or other identity based on their appearance or name. No one should share more information than they're comfortable with. Recognize that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, even if it's different. Respect other people's opinions, actively listen. Okay, and of course, respect speakers' privacy. Okay, please do not share names and stories outside this talk. Okay, so with that, we'll end the presentation.